All right, so moving on to the next attribute. This is you're the wind beneath their wings, as I have chosen to paraphrase it, but this is they firmly holding to the belief that they're better than other people. So we're going to start getting into like kind of the heart of the matter and the meat of the sandwich, what people tend to think is the actual hallmark of narcissistic personality disorder. And this one, along with the next one, which is condescension, are why they gaslight. And that they don't think they're gaslighting is basically what we're getting into. So narcissists don't gaslight. They effectively live in an entirely different reality from the rest of us. So remember for self-centeredness, I had phrased it as the proverbial light bulb joke, right? So that is how many narcissists does it take to screw in a light bulb? It's just one because they hold on to the light bulb while the world revolves around them, right? This flip of perspective that's very incredibly actually like self-centered and very self-focused and the way that they view the world puts them in a different reality from everybody else. So the definition of gaslighter is making someone doubt their reality. And the thing is that narcissists actually believe their own bullshit. But remember how we talked about last time that bullshit is just made of grass, right? I think that there's a certain aplomb that narcissists speak with that gives rise to the fact like that it gets people to believe them as well, right? They're kind of like charismatic con artists in this way. Um, and that a lot of what we attribute to them is actually like there's not really a whole lot of substance there. So like I've also mentioned that they're a little bit dull and dim-witted. So they see themselves as some kind of social monarch. Like they think that they're just really good with people, and that's why they fit in with so many different groups. They're like a monarch butterfly, but the reality is that they're social butterflies who just don the kind of wings they need to fly with whatever colony they feel like flying with on a particular day. And that doesn't make them savvy with people. It just makes them fake. Like, honey, we can all be fake, right? These talents and skills that they think that they have, especially socially and stuff, aren't even talents and skills. They're just normal, everyday, ordinary behavioral things human beings tend to do. And they don't do them very well. That's why this is a disorder and not some sort of talent. Okay. So, with that in mind, I think we can go ahead and move right into this one. So, that you're speaking of wings, right? You're the wind beneath their wings. It's astonishing what a narcissist will consider evidence of superiority while neglecting all reason with respect to obvious indications that they are wrong, sometimes even in a highly generalizable sense or an intersubjective sense. How dare they tell me that my experience isn't relevant or that my opinions are false? So this is going back to the favorite color conversation between Chris and Alex, right? When I say opinions, I mean opinions, not judgments, or whatever. Like it's saying that someone's opinions. So like a narcissist will tell you that you're wrong for not liking a movie. Right, where and it's like, but I didn't like it. Like you didn't enjoy it. You have a right to not enjoy things. To be told that you're wrong for not enjoying something, right? It's weird and it's irritating and like I said, I think people get bent out of shape over this whole like, well, who do they think they are? And it's like, no, really, like who the hell do they think they are? It's kind of dumb to not realize that there's no accounting for taste, right? It's kind of dumb to try to tell me that because a particular experience I had is outside of the norm, that I okay, so like think of like I feel like in the grand scheme of things, let's just take the 80-20 rule and roll with it, right? 20% of people had horrible childhoods because their parents were bad parents. 80% of people had wonderful childhoods and they love their parents and they couldn't imagine their lives without them and they'll be devastated when they die, right? Of the 20% of people, half of us are willing to throw the match ourselves, right? That a narcissist will tell you that because you're a member of the 20%, it doesn't give you the right to go around online pointing out to people that it's wrong to say that universally people should honor their parents and cherish them and call them on their birthdays, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And then it's like, no, I think that it does people good to understand that they're not alone in situations, or like that, just that opinion. Because this is a whole other can of worms, right? But like that opinion that, well, no matter how bad your parents were, it doesn't ever give someone the license to not have a relationship with them as an adult child is absurd and ridiculous. But there really are people out there who truly hold to that and they hold to it tightly. The irony being most of those are these asshole parents who are pissed off that their adult children won't talk to them. So anyway, all that being said, um, so just moving right along. But I just wanted to make that clear that what I'm talking about here is the way that the gaslighting, right? Like I said, that trying to make you feel like your experiences aren't valid or your opinions could be wrong or, that you just don't know what you're talking about when you clearly do because you're a human being that has a right to your own values. So this is the typical mindset of anyone who has ever dealt with a narcissist. But do we, as the target of narcissistic abuse, actually have enough information to come to this conclusion, or are we misinterpreting the motivation behind this behavior because it offends us? Right? I don't think that the narcissist does this because they actually feel superior in a snooty, stuck up sort of way, or because they are intentionally trying to intimidate you. The behavior stems from a lack of a normative sense of self, right? So because they are constantly moving all over the map, they themselves lack this sense of direction to be able to even tell themselves whether or not they have a right to form that opinion. I mean, just think about all of the diagnostic attributes from the first criterion. A lot of them have to do with not being able to make decisions without copious amounts of input from other people and stuff like that, right? So it's like consider this the source. I love the rapper Snow the Product. She has that line at the very beginning of her song, Could Never Be You. And she says, like, I would never let a dude who lies to himself come and lie to my face and believe it. And I'm like, that's fucking dealing with a narcissist in a nutshell, right? Why do you let this person who can't even ground themselves attempt to ground you and do it in a way where you feel like it's a punishment? Like, it's really strange, right? So, like I said, try taking this alternative perspective on what they're saying and doing and see them a little bit more as dealing with a child or dealing with someone of like diminished intellectual capacity, and it makes dealing with them really not only just like a lot easier but actually a little bit fun in a diabolical sort of way. Those of us who do not suffer from narcissism, and then it always wants to change it to narcissist instead. I thought I caught all of these. All right, anyway. Those of us who do not suffer from narcissism usually take the perspective that it's easier for them to behave with unbridled confidence, plowing through every other psyche in their wake, than to wind up stuck sorting through all their own muck and mire. But is that what is really happening inside their mind? I suspect that for the narcissist, their internal state is even more dire than merely being afraid to face their former self with the threat of nostalgic embarrassment or minor regrets for things said and not said, things done and not done. The narcissist lacks the necessary aspects of personality that would allow them to be capable of doing that at all. So now we're getting into what I would call like an emotional Dunning-Kruger effect, right? So if without relevant expertise, right? You can't grade your own tests. Like that's the whole reason you go to school, right? Is so someone who does know the answers tells you that you know the answers. They lack a pen and paper, right? They don't even have the test taking they don't have the neurons for this shit, right? Their brains don't perform the function of self-reflection. If the narcissist has never formulated a proper sense of self, then there is nothing for the narcissist to firmly believe anything about. This supposed trait of the narcissist, that they believe themselves to be better than others, is attributed to the body of the narcissist via the target's experience with their behavior within the context of their shared social norms. But since the narcissist has trouble relating to the social norms, they don't understand what exactly it is that they are doing that rubs people the wrong way. So going back to this, if the narcissist has never formulated a proper sense of self, then there is nothing for the narcissist to firmly believe anything about, right? They don't have access to it, to even scrutinize it, right? It's it's like asking a blind man to scrutinize a painting, right? They could be a scholar about sculptures because they have tactile ability, but they can't tell you shit all about paintings. Because like even if I know like a lot of paintings and stuff is like the brush strokes and the texture, but you're not supposed to touch it or your hand oils are going to degrade the paint, right? So like they're not allowed tactile function on the paintings either. So they don't have the artistic scrutiny ability of scrutinizing certain aspects of themselves because they can't do it, right? They can't see it, so they can't do it. But because they don't do it, it would be right to say of this scholar that they lack scholastic ability when it comes to paintings, right? So, like I said, it's like they completely lack a sense of self because they lack the neuronal function of self-reflection in the first place. So they cannot grasp this. It's not possible. So, and I feel like I'm going to go ahead and bold that because I think that that's actually incredibly important, especially with respect to my thesis, right? That they've put what would normally be a sense of self, they've imbued their understanding of the external world. They've put those things in those categories instead, right? So it would kind of like be imagine like you could have a cookbook with a bunch of recipes in it, or you could tear each page out, fold it up, and then store the recipe for that thing with the main ingredient, right? Which is a weird way of looking at it, right? But it's like, but you don't have a cookbook anymore. You have a bunch of ingredients with little bits and pieces of a cookbook like stapled to the back of the box. So when someone asks you to look at your cookbook, right, to look at yourself, there is no cookbook because all of the elements of the cookbook are just sprinkled throughout the ingredients of how they're talking to you now, right? So like let's say it was a like if you had a cookbook that was just like 10 recipes for an epic 10-course meal. And so like let's say there's like an escargot appetizer. You rip that page out, you fold it up and you tuck it underneath your snails in the refrigerator. And then the next page is like for a great salad. And so the main ingredient is kale. And so you fold up that and you tuck it in the bag with the kale. And then the next is for a soup that the main ingredient is onions. And so you fold that up and put it in the bag of onions, right? So like I said, you don't have a cookbook anymore. You have a bunch of ingredients, you have a bunch of words, you have a bunch of terms, you have a bunch of concepts about the external world. And packaged with those concepts are the elements of what should be your cookbook. And so they don't have a cookbook, right? They don't have a self. They have an understanding of the external world that's peppered with too much personal bias. This supposed trait of the narcissist that they believe themselves to be better than others is attributed to the body of the narcissist via the target's experience with their behavior within the context of their shared social norms, right? So we think they should have a personality, but because they don't, you then end up fundamentally misunderstanding their motivations for the things that they're doing. This also starts to strike upon problems with, so there's the philosophical definition of truth as being a justified true belief. So, and I've mentioned this before, right? Because they self-justify things that they claim to know that we would take as being unknowable. So, like I said, the accounting for taste. So, like, knowing that you are wrong to not have liked a movie, right, is weird to us and it just sounds pompous and arrogant. To the narcissist, they truly believe that an important page of anyone's cookbook has got to be the French onion soup. So how do you not like the Onion movie? Their whole perspective of things is skewed. So then when they tell you, right, you're just wrong to have not liked that movie, right? You're like, how the hell are you going to tell me that I'm not right to like something, right? Especially a movie, right? How can you tell me that I'm wrong that I didn't like the Onion movie? And they genuinely don't understand what's wrong with them telling you it's weird that you don't like the Onion movie. Right? So it's people are on completely different playing fields. right? I feel like it's kind of similar too, you could think about as far as like your visual external world, right? You live in an entirely different reality from someone who's colorblind in that particular sense, right? So the problem is that narcissists differ from people in these really important intersubjective ways. Major criticisms of the diagnostic criteria of personality disorders from the DSM-4 and DSM-5 include how subjective they are, as well as how constrained by social and cultural norms the interpretation of the behaviors and traits are. The first sign of trouble for these criteria is how, for lack of a better word, judgmental, with every negative connotation generally associated with that word, they are. One of the criteria specifically says the subject has a belief that they are special or unique. But this is just arrogance that would be present in anyone from spoiled, bratty rich kids to a simple minded small town beauty queen that believes everyone will feel the way her parents and peers feel about her. Right? That's just spoiled brat arrogance in a lot of ways. So this is where too, like that people get it's hard to get a sense for the gravity of a disorder when the diagnostic criteria just sound like everyday negative nitpicky shit that you could say about probably anybody at any given point in time based on a specific behavior you've observed or element of their personality or just, or I should say, like of their character, right? So it's like it's sometimes it's like the bratty kid isn't necessarily trying to be a brat. Like nobody, generally speaking, goes about their lives trying to piss off everyone they meet. That would be a really fucked up way to try to live, right? So it's odd to think, right, that an ill-behaved child is actually just being ill-behaved for the sake of being ill-behaved. But we kind of try, like, a lot of people kind of tend to think that, like, narcissists are just arrogant pricks for the sake of being arrogant pricks, right? And it's like they're not Patrick Bateman's out here. They're not like caught up in being a yuppie or something, and so they act like a douchebag. It's like they actually are. That's who they are, and they're just being themselves, or whatever is something's causing the behavior in the moment. Right? A kid throwing a temper tantrum is actually upset over something. We might realize that it's petty because we're adults and we're desensitized to the bullshit, but that doesn't mean that for this kid it isn't very important, right? So when you're dealing with these narcissists and stuff, sometimes it's like I said, they believe their own bullshit. Like their bullshit isn't just grass, like it's golf course grass, right? This is carefully manicured grass, bitch. Like I'm a child of God. How do you not understand? My delusions are grandiose. I just have high goals, I just don't want the goal setter. I don't know, like they genuinely just can't see it, and I'm wagering like they cannot see it. They're literally blinded to it. The second sign of trouble is that a lot of the traits are completely internal to the point that it would require a self-report of preoccupations and beliefs. Hell, I'll cop to being preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love in order to stay motivated while pursuing a degree, entertainment career, spouse, and positive self-image with little to no support from family or friends. That's just being your own cheerleader, right? So like I said, some of the diagnostic criteria just seem very thin, right? Like I feel like in a certain sense, if this is just motivation, right? Being free, this is literally from the DSMs, right? This is the quote. This is the diagnostic criteria. Preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. I mean, that's just having an ultimate desire that you're passionate about fulfilling for yourself. I don't even think that sounds like a negative trait to have. Like, I don't know. The diagnosis, I'm sorry, I take serious issue with them. That's why, and I definitely prefer the model. This appears in the back of the DSM-5 text revised, but it is not the official diagnostic criteria for personality disorders, the framework that I'm working with here. And I honestly can't fathom the fuck why it's not. Like, I just can't. Um, The third sign of trouble is that these traits can easily be applied to any successful person by a sore competitor or a hypersensitive acquaintance. And now, granted, these are not diagnostic people, so this is just, for the conversational purpose. Like I said, the diagnostic criteria just sound like everyday things that you would think about people you don't like. Lost an election to the charismatic visionary who wasn't afraid to point out opponents' shortcomings. Arrogant prick. Friend actually had the gall to tell you look terrible in your favorite colors. Bitch. So what if you do seem to be too attached to focus groups and straw polls in order to direct your leadership agenda? So what if navy blue on your fair olive skin makes you look like the pale horse of the apocalypse? Only a narcissist would regularly do 5 of the things on this list. Hardly. Hardly. Okay. I mentioned in the first paragraph of this section that the narcissist's fragile sense of self is important, but it's why their sense of self is fragile that is really at the center of understanding why they seem to think that they are better than everyone else. I feel as though I have made a strong case in favor of my hypothesis by appealing to the proposed criteria and supporting my claims with evidence. I wouldn't have been able to do this with the diagnostic criteria as they are far too speculative and or rely on the experiences of other people rather than the internal workings of the person you claim to be diagnosing from with a psychological disorder. That seems fucked up to me. So anyway, that meaning like a lot of these diagnostic criteria are relying on self-reporting, feeling preoccupied, and believing that you're grandiosely delusional, which also seems to be antithetical to the idea of the anosognosia aspect of a psychological disorder, of like knowing that like as part of the disorder you don't know you have the disorder. So it's like, how the hell are you going to ask someone who's an arrogant prick, like, so you think you're an arrogant prick? Like, they probably don't. That's part of being an arrogant prick, right? So sorry, I genuinely find the diagnostic criteria. It's a list of 9 items. You got to have 5 of which on a regular basis, yada yada, to be diagnosed with a disorder. And I just really find the capabilities of using this to diagnose anyone with anything to just be completely laughable. And I don't mean I mean that tongue in cheek wise, just being a cheeky bitch. In a professional sense, it's very thin. It's like expecting someone to get fat off of broth. I mean, it just how bitch, like, you'll die of hydrocephaly before you drink enough broth to get fat. Get the fuck out of here, right? That it's like that you would die trying to diagnose everybody if you actually looked hard enough, right? You would never get people to tell them. It's just like, I mean, everybody has maybe that, like, like when when you're a kid and you're like preoccupied with your little like teeny bopper crush or something like that. But to ask someone if they feel preoccupied with delusions or grandeur, I feel like it's a weird question, right? It's a weird question. You go to your psychiatrist or your psychologist for like anxiety and depression, and they're asking you to like self-report if you're maybe an arrogant prick. I mean, there's something about it that just seems really silly to me. For this attribute, I once again don't have clear-cut personal cases in point because this trait is so pervasive to the overall tone of a narcissist's interactions with others. The new format for the diagnostic criteria draws a clear distinction between the internal traits of Criterion A and the outward interpersonal behaviors in Criterion B. All of the criteria can be directly experienced by an outside observer, and the interpersonal maladaptations in Criterion B can be predicted based on observation of the traits in Criterion A. I feel like I've made a decent enough argument of that already, like with the kind of being able to excessively reference the things that I've already said. Like, I feel like I've already explained these in a sort of clinical sense, so now we get to just kind of have some fun with examples, right? However, the behaviors that lead to the impression that the narcissist has the traits in Criterion B are not necessarily unique features of the narcissist. They're the very behaviors observed by others that lead to a colloquial accusation of narcissism. So, like, the regular diagnostic criteria in conjunction with the very commonly observed behaviors on a regular basis, it's what's lending itself to people kind of overusing, pointing fingers and accusing people of having this as a personality disorder, as opposed to just pointing out or noticing that it's a little bit adaptive to be a little bit selfish. narcissistic teacher, firmly believing that one is better than others, plays directly into behaving in a condescending manner toward others, which is the next and final feature under the topic of grandiosity. I feel as though the feature of feeling as though one is better than others is best handled by being explained in virtue of generalized expression, as, like I said, it is the best way to articulate the sense of the overall tone of a narcissist's interaction with others as they are experienced by others. Here are two common ways in which the belief that one is better than others shows itself without necessarily being condescending. Because the next diagnostic attribute is condescension. So I'm trying to make some kind of a distinction here. And so what I'm getting at in this section is that this is where it starts to make sense to rely on the input of other people in the way that they, because it wouldn't be a disorder if nobody was bothered by you, right? So like now is when we start seeing, like I said, we get to move from clinical descriptions to real world anecdotal observations and how it ties into and is a result of the problems that we discussed in Criterion A. Okay, so case in point number one is unsolicited advice. This is a pretty well-known irritating behavior that isn't unique to narcissism. It arises frequently when you're around a narcissist, though, and what's more, you'll likely find a narcissist passing your own information back to you in a bad habit I like to call boomerang. This can easily come across as though they think they are better than you to give you your own advice back, or seem to imply that you have forgotten or never learned something that they have now forgotten you told them in the first place. This works for like conversational stories. Like if you had some like really exceptional weird thing that happened to you when you were a kid, and you'll tell the narcissist the story about yourself. I tried to come up with something kind of benign off the top of my head. Like, let's say you had an embarrassing thing happen to you in school where you like slipped in the cafeteria, went down a flight of stairs, ended up sending a carton of milk flying in the air that then exploded in your face when it fell back down to the ground, right? Whatever. And you tell the narcissist this happened to you when you were in the 7th grade. And then fast forward like several months and something happens and they're like, oh my God, like this one time I had a friend in middle school that she slipped in the cafeteria and the milk, and like they tell you your story back to you as though they observed it themselves back in the day. Sometimes it's just as simple as like, I knew a girl once that told me that she slipped and then you have to be like, yeah, that was me. I'm the one who told you that story. They're like I said, this is liable to happen to anybody at any given time. Like that you forgot that, oh yeah, you are that friend. Shit, my bad. Right? Narcissists have a tendency to do this a lot. They will tell you the things you told them back to you. He was really bad about this. Her, not necessarily, right? So like I said, and that's the thing too, like people don't necessarily have every single trait. So I will say that as far as this, and the unsolicited advice kind of in general, his was more unsolicited suggestions that he really thought like he should be suggesting things that I should be doing with myself to occupy my time or something that I just wasn't interested in doing. And he would just repeatedly make these suggestions until I would have to tell him, like, I have less than zero interest in doing that. That's why I don't take your suggestion. Shut the fuck up about it. Right? And quit suggesting I do that. I don't want to. So like for a while, like I went through like a jewelry making phase, and he kept suggesting that I make hair accessories and stuff. And it's that might be in here. I don't know, but still, I know it was mentioned in Light Traffic, right? And that I eventually kind of had to shut it down and be like, even if I wanted to do that, I don't have any fixtures to make hair accessories with. Like, I don't have any plain barrettes or hair tie. I don't have the stuff to do it with, right? It was like, why would you want, like, beaded hair ties? Why? So your hair could just get all caught up in it? So I also kind of had to explain, your idea is terrible, like, in practice, right? It's a horrible suggestion for multiple reasons. Quit suggesting it. But now when I look back on it in light of the Twilight Zone Fight Club Casino, it's like he thinks he's talking about something else. And so then when you have to point out what you're actually saying to me, it doesn't make sense that you're engaging in the behavior of making these kinds of suggestions to me in the first place, but your suggestions are bad suggestions. So I mean, it would be like, imagine your dad trying to tell you how to look sexier for your boyfriend. Like, you just be like, dude, no, right? But that also their suggestions would be weird stuff like, and I'm not trying to offend you, like, just you do you, but like things like quit shaving your legs and fart in bed under the covers, right? And you just be like, why are you doing this? And then also giving me bad advice, right? That was what being around him was like a lot of times. So, aha, here's where things get spooky. If you interpret this behavior in light of my hypothesis, what you will see is that the narcissist never learned that you gave them the information. They just suddenly have information that you should find equally useful. So remember, like the cookbook example, they don't file, like there's a file in their brain for the advice you gave them. They didn't file you in the advice. They just filed the advice away along with this is good advice. And so in their mind, it's just good advice that they know. And they could give a fuck about the source. So they don't remember, they don't care. Right? So now going back to criterion A, right from the very beginning, excessive reference to other people for this self-esteem regulation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In the short-term moment, they find it okay or cool to be able to reference everybody else who thinks it's going to rain. But when it comes to long-term things, like you giving them the advice to always keep a poncho in their fanny pack, right? Always, because you could, buy a cheap poncho that looks flat, like takes up like the space of like 10 index cards. You know what I'm saying? Slip it in your wallet, slip it in your back pocket, whatever. You're the one who gave them the advice to always carry a poncho. So when they're telling you, oh my gosh, you're going on a hike today. You know what? You should make sure that you always carry a poncho with you because it's just so flat and easy to carry. You're like, yeah, bitch, I'm the one who told you that in the first place. Oh, well, I just wanted to like make sure that you remember your poncho. Well, then make sure you're like, yes, like that. These are behaviors that are irritating. So anyway, they just suddenly have information that you should find equally useful. They don't have a concept of you outside of being someone that wants to know what they know. They don't remember the fact that you find the information useful. That's why you told them in the first place. Telling them this will incite a narcissistic glitch. Narcissists will relate an experience that happened to one of their friends to you when you are that friend, right? And then when you point out, I am that friend, like, you can see it kind of blip across their face. There's like a light that leaves their eyes for just a beat when you see them realizing that they didn't do something that it seems people think they should be doing, right? They can recognize that that feedback is calling them inferior in some way, right? And then it's something that maybe they need to mitigate. But at the same, it's like I think over time they kind of start to learn, like nobody's perfect, but it's like, well, but most of us are operating above average, bitch. You know, right? Like you can only say that so many times. Like I said, like with him, like the things that you're bad at can only be petty and unimportant so frequently before you're kind of operating at a diminished capacity. You might need some functional assistance, right? At some point, we draw these lines. Like people don't get diagnosed with a learning disability and then not get help to facilitate them overcoming it. You're like, oh, you're um, blind in one eye. Who gives a shit? Just keep reading. Like you know what I mean? Like we identify these things for a reason. So I swear I'm not making this up. This literally just happened as I was typing the previous pair. I was gonna say I think this is gonna be the storage device example. I swear I'm not making this up. This literally just happened as I was typing the previous paragraph. And this is another thing that lends itself, these weird coincidences that lends itself to the idea of the Twilight Zone, like the Twilight Zone casino fight club, and the fact that like maybe we were being watched and they knew that and I didn't. But like that, because I would repeatedly have, while I was writing this, like even writing the journals and writing this specifically, that I would be typing up about something and then he would do something that was exactly that thing that I was writing about in the moment. And it's like I can't believe my luck. But it's like it's like there's a guardian angel out there watching over this shit or something. Because what they tell, like there's no coincidences. Like, yeah. Anyway. So he just excitedly told me that he's charging his phone by plugging it into the USB port on his laptop. I've told him this before when I showed him how to use the charger that came with the phone to transfer pictures to his laptop. So he'd taken a bunch of pictures at a parade or something, and he wanted to upload them to Facebook. And so he asked me if I knew how to do that. And I was like, yeah, you just take the charger from your phone, and instead of plugging it into the charging block, plug it into your computer. And then it's like an external hard drive. And showed him how to move the photos over. And then I mentioned, I was like, it's also charging your phone while you're doing it. So you can charge your phone this way. It's just going to drain your laptop. It's called phantom power, by the way. But, um, but the more I try to tell him that this is not new to me, nor should it be to him because I already taught him this, he keeps saying, no, but it's charging. He thinks I must not be grasping what he's saying because I'm not amazed. It can't possibly be the case that he's the only person who didn't know this. I must not be excited because I'm not getting it. Never mind that I'm literally telling him that I'm the one who told him you could do this a long time ago. He's searching for validation that he's not a total jackass, and he is not going to get that from me. Like, eventually, he wants me to just concede and be like, oh, like you mean like the battery is charging? Oh my God, that's so cool. Right. And just to end the conversation on a high note for him. And like, I'm not going to do that. I don't let kids win at checkers and card games, and I'm not going to let some creepy old man pull one over on me and get a compliment for free. Right. I'm not a pond. You don't go fishing in me. Okay. But now when I'm looking back, like I was just talking about the Twilight Zone Casino Fight Club, right? This is what I'm supposed to be doing, apparently, because that's what it almost sounds. That it's like you're charging. The phony is like who knows? Like and I know this is like a weird, far fetched sounding, like metaphorical example, but maybe that's what that was supposed to be. Is like that? No, like just charging forward with writing about this shit. Have these fucked up experiences and then tell everybody about it. I always say, like, if you're familiar with the Bible, there's the story of Job, which is simply put, this dude was like rich, right? He had like several wives and beautiful children and a lot of money, and business was booming and everything was great. And then for some reason, God is up on the mountain with the adversary, right? Which we now have come to know and love as his Lord and Savior, Satan Christ. And he taunts God and is like, Job is such a faithful follower of God. Like, you should, blah, blah, blah. I really want to go through the Bible and espouse my belief of what it is that they're actually talking about and believe. But anyway, that all being said, um, I've kind of thought about making it like a special edition of Wraithline and maybe for a while doing special episodes. That's maybe a good idea. Anywho, I always have to come up with stuff to keep me occupied and potentially become lucrative. Anywho, so my point being, so so God takes it as like Satan tells you, he's like, if you took everything away from Job, he'd curse your name. Like he'd be like, fuck God, I'm done with that guy. And God is like, nah, I believe in Job. I'm gonna take that bet. And he strikes Job down. He kills his wives and children and strips him of his wealth, and I think gives him leprosy. Like he makes him sick. I mean, it's just God does the most, okay? And poor Job is just still like, God, I don't know what happened, but I believe in you, and I believe that one day you're going to give me back everything that I had. Da, 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 da. And so God wins the bet with Satan and gives Job all of his shit back. That I feel I like this is. I'm like, please tell me that's not what my life. That it's literally the point of going through all of this shit, was just to go through a bunch of shit to talk about what it's like going through shit, because that's whack. All right. Anyway. He didn't think he was better than me. He didn't find the information. And I think this is kind of funny. It's like with like how I was saying about like if your opinion of the movie is bad and someone tries to tell you you're just wrong for not liking the movie, it's almost this weird. I don't want to call it imposter syndrome or a cognitive dissonance, but it's kind of like if my life were a movie, it's like, dude, your movie about your life is like mad viral and like hella people love it and think it's epic and you're a badass, and I fucking hate this shit. I have a right to hate my life, guys. I have a right to think this is whack, right? And I think that that's one of the things about this that's peculiar, that it's like, of all the people to not be a fan of this IP, right? This intellectual property, this project, this whatever you want to write, this character, right? Of all the people to not be a fan of this, it's the person we fucked through it. But I feel like that's a little bit more like a be careful what you wish for, monkey's paw kind of situation, right? Who the hell did you think was probably going to hate this the most? It's going to be the person you did it to. No, I mean, you're just saying that because your leg is busted and you're fat. Well, yeah, asshole. Duh. But I also can look at this, I almost dissociate and look at it from a third party perspective and be like, I can see why people like the book, but I still don't like it. It was like, there was a book that someone suggested I read once, and I was really, I was like, by the time I was offended by the suggestion. I was like, I was mad at this person for this. And I had one of my good friends, and I was like, you tell me if the book is offensive or what, right? I was like, here's what happened. Here's the book. She read it, and she's like, I actually really enjoyed the book, but I can completely see why you feel the way you feel. Not just about the book, but about the situation in general, right? Like I can see why you not only don't like the book, but are pissed off at the person who suggested you read it, right? And I think it's like, I can see why you don't like your life and you're upset with the people who nominated you to this because it doesn't suit me. And like I said, I think that a lot of people would see that, right? Or that it's like, yeah, this was not. It may have been the objectively the role I was born to play. I am not the bitch that should have been forced to do this. And it's if there was ever a better argument against the tabula rasa, right, that we're born a blank slate can be molded into whoever people want us to be, I'm it, bitch. We're not born blank. Not even remotely close. Absolutely, I think that maybe people who were born blank are a little fucking dull. Maybe narcissists are born blank. Maybe that's what's different about them from everybody else. They're not born with innate senses towards particular proclivities. Maybe that's what the root cause of it is. Fuck if I know. All I know is, like I said, I'm a human being with a right to my own opinions, and my opinion is that this is whack. All right. He didn't think he was better than me. He didn't find the information useful at the time when I taught him. I feel like taught is a little pompous, but like when I told him, so he trashed the concept. He didn't need to know it, so he didn't remember it. He genuinely thought that if I understood, I would be as excited as he was because this is a new object, phantom power, in our environment. It's a problem of solipsistic oneness that I, as a healthy person, do not experience and therefore cannot relate to. He is considering us as a strange unit of people. So, like, remember how, like, narcissists see other people as extensions of themselves, right? So not only does he not remember that I told him this already, he also thinks, he also, yeah, so he's caught up a little bit. um, that No, where was I? Sorry, it was that beautiful like red golden retriever again. He's quite large. That his leash was wrapped under his leg, kind of weird, and she was thinking that he kept trying to run off to sniff stuff, and he was kind of just trying to get his leg out from like the leash out from behind his leg. Anyway, um, so anywho, I think I've beaten the dead horse here, but like that now that it's like it's new to him again, and that even though I'm telling him I've already told you this, he for some reason is convinced that this is new information. So like I said, remember how I said though that like these are dichotomous, like almost like these are the dueling versions, right? Either these people are narcissists or there's weird shit going on in my life that they were fucking with. They're weird ass juju magic that they were always trying to perform cognitive spells on me, right? Right? Like they're thinking that they're sneaking these secret messages from the other side, and I don't even know the other side exists, so I can't understand any of their messages. Or they have a fucking personality disorder. Maybe it's a little bit of both. Who knows? But like I said, I just want to reiterate there's a distinction. These are the two working theories of my life, right? Either I'm constantly finding myself closely quartered with fucking assholes, or there's something going on in my life that is asshole fuckery. And I just am being bombarded by it, by people. And I just happen to be living with them, so it made me an easier target for them, right? So, like I said, like maybe he, like if he wasn't talking about charging his phone, but I don't know what else he's talking. I can't parse the message. Whereas now, when I'm looking back, I'm like, maybe that was the message, that writing about this is what you're supposed to be doing now, talking shit. And it's like, why would you make somebody's life something that the end game is them talking their shit about how shit was shit? So I think I mentioned this before. It might have been Light Traffic, but there's the movie The Artifice Girl about a super intelligent AI who was originally created to ferret out pedophiles. And at one point, she tells her creator and the team that works with her that she even though she's an AI and is technically just a software program that doesn't have emotions and feelings and whatever, that at this point, from all that she knows about the human experience, that it seems really fucked up that you would create anything at all to exclusively spend its time only ever interacting with something so vile. Right. And I'm like, and I remember watching that movie a couple years ago and thinking, like, that's how I feel about my life. Right. It's like, I don't understand why you would ever think that it was a good idea to, like, make the story of Job come to life just for the example of it being fucking live action reality. Like, I don't fucking, I can't wrap my head around why someone would do that to somebody. Right. And that's not even in a like crying, whiny, upset, disappointed, woe with me. I mean this from a very pointed, like I said, I can dissociate and look at this and say, why in the fuck would you ever actually do this? It's like thinking about like imagine if you had like, and I feel like this would be kind of an equally fucked up experiment to do, but here's an experiment thing. When people are young, expose them to the Holocaust, but as though it's just a work of fiction. And then when they get older, they come to find out that that shit actually happened, and watch their reaction to finding out that this horrific story that they heard as kids like actually fucking happened, and just be mind blown at like, why would anyone ever do something like that, right? This having this like moral objectivity behind it, right? Where that when you heard it as though it were just a story, it was like, God, that's fucking terrible. Thank God we live in a world where people aren't monsters like that. And then one day, 10 years later, you are in history class learning about Hitler being like blown the fuck away, right? That it's like, that's what some of these experiences are like for me. That it's like, dude, the story of Job should have just stayed in the fucking Bible, right? It's a fucking story. Why would you do it to someone, right? Jesus fucking Christ, right? You know, the movie Martyrs is another really good example, right? You could be as curious as you want about that information, but going about getting it and the way they go about getting it is just so extraordinarily fucked up, right? Why? Like, my assertions did not occur to him to indicate that he is unintelligent or has a bad memory or just wasn't paying much attention. So, like I was saying, like in the moment when he's acting like this, right? Maybe the reason that, like, I'm calling you a stupid, irritating prick. Oh, I know you are, but I promise I'm not being, because I am saying something to you that should be new and interesting information, right? But the fact that it's not, because I don't know, I don't have the context to understand you, still makes you an irritating, stupid, pompous prick, right? It still makes you a bad person, for lack of a better way of boiling it down to brass tacks, right? It still makes you a bad person for trying. Because how would I understand you? Like, I'm not too stupid to use the codex. I don't have a codex. I don't even know that there's a game requiring a codex, right? It's like, I don't know we're in a casino, so of course I didn't bring my own dice, right? When you tell me shut up and shake it, I think you're a pervert, okay? It is what it is. There goes my rose gold mauve Panamera. Yeah. Yay. Anyway, pretty cars. My assertions did not occur to him to indicate that he is unintelligent or has a bad memory or just wasn't paying much attention. He was prone to write off my reactions as some trait of my own, busy, uninterested, it's not useful to me, or some other reason why I'm not just absolutely thrilled right now. There's no him to be dumb. Get it? There's no him to be better than anything. But me, I'm dead, right? They can understand that other people have senses themselves, but they themselves don't have one. That's what makes it so peculiar. So, but if he was playing a character, right, that I'm not, it's, oh, but she's not calling me dumb because I'm just playing this character. You're dumb because you took on the role, you stupid motherfucker. Right? You're a dumb asshole because you chose to do this. Because you're participating. This wouldn't be happening to me if they couldn't find willful participants to be doing it, right? The Nazi Germany doesn't happen without the SS, right? As much as they want to come back and be like, well, I was just doing my job. I was following orders. I was in the fucking military. What did you expect? Like, I mean, and you know, but at the same time, like, you just don't do that shit. You know what I mean? Like, you don't do it. Um, So all that being said, but like I said, it's like I can see that now, like this picture of like if you were just playing a role in a show, but like my life isn't a movie or a show. It's my fucking life. And they took it from me to turn me into some live action biblical bullshit. Like there's a scene. Maybe I need to go back and and watch it just because the scene is so cathartic, and I don't want to spoil it for the purposes of this conversation here, just because it's a great scene at the beginning of Martyrs. But it's at the beginning of the French version. The American version is a little different. It's watered down. It's toned down a bit. Um, And it has to do with what she does when she finds her abusers. And it's the sort of thing that you don't see people do in movies a whole hell of a lot. And I'll just leave it at that. Um, and very, it's very cathartic to watch, right? There was a time, I went into this other story. So we had to actually get a new Wi-Fi router, like modem router, and install and whatever. And I did it while he was in the shower. And then for some reason, he was convinced that I needed to do something with my laptop to make it like for security purposes. And I was trying to explain to him that because my computer was so much newer than his, that my machine was built to just do that anyway, regardless. I didn't have this setting that I needed to change because it's just standard in the newer operating system. And he kept insisting that I needed to do it. And I'm like, I don't know how else to explain to you that I can't because it's already built into the operating system. There isn't anything to do, right? Or whatever. It's just, it is the way it is. Because when he first asked me and I just casually answered, then it's like, no, because I have whatever it was, Windows 10 or whatever the fuck. Like his laptop was on like Windows 7 or some shit. I don't know. But he was asking, you need to do this setting change. And I was like, no, I was like, because I have a newer operating system than yours, they just added that in to just be the default setting. And he kept insisting that I needed to change it. And I'm like, no, what you're telling me, like, it's kind of like if you got like central air and the default setting is 72 degrees. And then your roommate keeps insisting that because the power went out and came back on, that you need to reset the thermostat. And you say, no, because the temperature that we like, 72 degrees, is the default temperature setting of the central air conditioning. It will just be at 72 degrees. And they just, but you need to put it down to 72 degrees. No, that's what it defaults to. So when it kicked back on, it's set on 72 degrees, and they keep insisting that you get up off the couch. And you're like, bro, I don't understand why you're not understanding this. The default temperature is the temperature you're telling me to change it to. And he was getting angry. And I was like, I don't understand why you're getting angry. Like, you're yelling at me about this. And he's like, that's the problem. You don't understand why I'm yelling. And I'm like, okay, because first of all, if you're getting so frustrated with the role you've chosen to play because I can't understand what it is you think you're actually telling me, you don't get to yell at me, you little Lord Fuckleroy. Okay? I will push you out the fucking window. Like, even thinking about it now, I'm like, I literally was considering killing this man to get out of this situation. That is how bad this is. When people say, you're like, you're no, but this is so badass. Like, this is whack. This shit has damn near driven me to suicide and murder. I am pissed the fuck off if I'm right about the Twilight Zone casino fight club bingo bullshit. I am pissed off. Okay? You thought John Wick was pissed off over his dog? Bitch, you ain't seen nothing yet. And I feel like I'm crazy because I sit here and I'm just pissing myself off by even believing that this is an option because it's so unbelievably fucked up, right? It's overwhelmingly, unbelievably fucking stupid, right? I can't even believe it. I mean, it's like, do you understand the risk that you put myself and other people in danger of in order to pull this off? Like, I got to a point where a friend of mine asked me to stop talking to them about this because in the event that I actually did it, it would make them an accomplice because they knew I'd been talking about it and didn't say anything. There's that story about the lady that was the girlfriend of the guy that bombed something, and she'd been calling the FBI or whoever or whatever and saying that, like, I think he's making bombs in the garage, and they didn't take her seriously. And then after he blew some shit up, they came along and tried to arrest her for being an accomplice. And she's like, who the fuck do you think has been calling you for the last year and a half telling you this man buys way too much fertilizer? Like, what the fuck? Right? So I'm like sitting here and I'm thinking, like, who has been telling you people you're fucking stupid assholes since she was 10 years old? Right? Who's been telling y'all that this is a stupid idea and that you shouldn't do it? For a long fucking time. Right? And so anyway, all that, like, this is really cathartic. So anyway, I was like, this is taking a lot of tension off my back. I think what happened, something happened earlier today or some point that, like, so, like, are you having a good day? And I realized, I'm like, I actually kind of am. This is kind, it's like I feel a lot better, like, just getting all this dumb shit off my chest. Tell them how you really feel, bitch. There aren't words to express how I really feel. Like, and I mean that in an objective sense. I find that words don't do my senses justice. Okay, like if you've ever actually been to Kauai, you know that pictures don't do it justice. Like, seeing it in real life is like it eclipses the quality of even the best photographs I've seen of it. Right, like that. This man that just walked back and forth, all he did was run into Whole Foods for a whole rotisserie chicken, and I'm here for it because he is a stud muffin, and he's sweaty, and he didn't have his shirt on, and then he got on his moped, and he, like, gave me a take the shirt off show, and so my apologies. But, oh, and he's coming this way on his bike. Look at him go. Anyway, yeah, like words don't exist, right? It's like in Sex and the City when Carrie says, like, we're so over, we need a new word for over. Like, I'm so angry, I need a new word for it. Like, this is so unbelievably fucking stupid. Like, I just want my check and go. Like, I just want to get paid and walk off the stage. Like, And I'm like, if I get to, and they're like, oh no, there was never, like, bitch, you owe me, like I've actually thought about this. And it's like, if I write about the Twilight Zone Casino Fight Club, what do you want? And there's a part of me, like, because I'm like, I don't know if it's the Catholic Church or the government. And this is where the whole schizophrenia shit starts to kick in. But like, I'm telling you, like, I can't bring myself to believe this is real because it's so far fetched and fucked up and dumb, right? It's so ridiculous. So, um, but that being said, right? I'm afraid to set my phone down and pack. Oh, wait, hold on. Anyway, sorry, need a moment. I was charging with my external battery and it's done now, so I want to just go ahead and pack it up and put it away. Every time I lay my phone down on the bench, it goes to sleep regardless. So anyway, so I find it impossible to actually like accept that it's reality, right? It's like, nah, there's no fucking way. But when I think about it, I'm like, who would even be capable of doing that? I mean, like, what kind of an institution would even be capable of pulling something like this off? And it's like the only thing I can think of, and this brings me to the American version of the movie 13 Sins, where that's kind of the point of that movie, where like it's the American version, is the people that are have participated in the game in the past are also trying to figure out who's even doing this because the game is so um, it's so complicated and so that it's like how would you even get this many people involved? Like, how did they find her and find him to employ them in this way? Like, what kind of influence and whatnot would you have to be able to even do something like this? Like, it would have to be the government of an entire country, or like an entire organized religion. It's like, like I said, like, I don't know if it's the American government or the Catholic Church, but I'm like, by the time this is all done or whatever, like, this is I'm like, I want hundreds of millions, if not a straight cool $1 billion for this. Like, can I be the first self-made billionaire from the paycheck that I receive from being fucked over this hard? But then that makes me feel guilty and weird because like nobody's ever gotten reparations for like slavery and shit. So I mean, it's like, that is there even going to be some kind of compensation? Maybe the compensation is just going to be the popularity I gained from talking my shit about it. I mean, it's like, how actually fucking ridiculous is this shit, right? How low energy, low vibration, no dick energy, stupid shit, how fucking bad is this really? That they would do all of this to somebody and then finally just be like, okay, we're done now. Or like, just like, they're never going to tell you, right? Everything's going to just have to flow. Like, am I ever going to actually be debriefed? Is anyone ever actually going to tell me the truth? Like, come on. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. Like I said, like, I feel like Miss Havisham over here, right? That it's just like, they're just never gonna tell me, are they? Like, everything is like, nope, life is just gonna go on, and you're never gonna know for sure whether or not any of this was actually some long con, deep seated fuckery or not. You're just gonna be famous for talking your shit and sounded like a crazy bitch. Like, okay, fine, whatever, I guess. I mean, if anything is demonstrative of the fact that I could probably have a stellar career in politics after this shit, but who the fuck wants to do that? Anyway, just saying. Case in point two, useless suggestions. Everyone's a critic and opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. But narcissists inadvertently take this to another level. They will butt into your hobbies, any craft or talent that you have, your favorite foods, your preferred music and movie genres, you name it, they have a suggestion. They don't mean any harm by this. In fact, they genuinely believe that they are being helpful. Your favorite band is Nirvana? Have you ever heard of the Beatles? The narcissist's knee-jerk reaction to preferences other than their own is to ascertain that you're naive. This is actually a charitable perspective if you think about it. Sometimes it seems as though narcissists get a little, and I mean on their behalf, right? There is a little bit of like, that they don't think that you're a stupid asshole for not agreeing with their opinions. They think that you just haven't heard good music yet, you know? Sometimes it seems as though narcissists get a little angry at having to present you with a better option. Sometimes they simply seem frustrated, but just as often, especially in the infatuation stage of a relationship, they seem giddy about it. That's because at first it's new and exciting, but the more that you don't share their love of baseball, cashmere, space exploration, and fusion cuisine, the more they become frustrated with themselves, right? Because they're getting information that maybe indicates that they don't know their preferences are correct, right? And they get upset with you about it. Remember when I was saying that when he blew up at me about the whole internet settings thing? Like, which I hope so because that was like 5 minutes ago. Um, the thing you've got to also realize about that situation is that that was my housing and livelihood at stake to being employed by him. So when he would get like that, it would cause me actual existential anxiety. And so I had come up with this metaphor like earlier today. It just kind of popped into my head. And it's like, like kids will have pinatas at their birthday parties and you like blindfold the kid and then kind of have to guide them gently towards the pinata so they can hit it with the stick. Like, what if you had somebody just shove the kid towards the pinata, but for some reason everybody at the party thought that the kid feigned falling down dramatically and hurting themselves, and so they're pointing and laughing and finding it embarrassing and chastising the kid and whatever. And no, what actually happened was that people you thought you could trust blindfolded you and then shoved you to the ground with a stick in your hands. You're lucky that you're not more injured than you already are. And now everyone around is laughing and accusing you of being an asshole, pretending to be hurt and trying to accuse this person of shoving you. That's how I feel like I've been treated. I know I was blindfolded and shoved because I'm still blindfolded laying on the ground hurt. And I feel like I'm just surrounded still by a bunch of people who are laughing and accusing me of being a jerk. And I don't know, I can't, there's nothing I can do to change that, right? Someone would have to vindicate me. And I hate that. I think that's absurd. I think it's gonna be like the VIN number on a car, VIN to Kate, because my name is actually Catherine, right? That it's like someone has to change me from this object they've just been driving around into a real person. And like I said, it's like, am I ever going to actually be debriefed? Or do they ever actually plan on telling me the truth? Like I said, it's like with this, that it's like you would have to be vindicated, right? The fact that the stuff that's happened to you happened because people planned on it and did it on purpose is something that's going to have to be admitted to when you're vindicated or like transformed like you're fucking Bumblebee or some shit. When they take you from just being a scrap of parts, to a doll, like from being plastic to being a real person. It's a horrible element of the story if it's true. That there's no way for me to even repair my own reputation or to be able to explain and convince that the things that have happened to me were completely orchestrated and it's bullshit. Um, which is one of the things that I'm going to attempt to do with Raceline. Right? When talking about my experiences, is point out, dude, this shit was scripted. People just don't, it doesn't even make sense for my landlord to have acted like this. Like things like that, right? Where it's like, this, it doesn't, it doesn't add up. But people can just as easily be like, right, it doesn't add up. Like, you're just an awful person. You didn't pay her rent. Like, fuck off. Nobody cares. Right? It's like, who would even care to listen to this shit? Why would this ever even have an audience? Right? It's just the whole of it just seems completely ridiculous. Like, I can see how it should have an audience because we need to actually start thinking very seriously about how we form society in America. But insofar as listening to my personal story in order to understand that, or like why I feel like it sounds like orchestrated bullshit, nobody's gonna fucking do that. Like, and that's not me having low self-esteem. That's me understanding how whack this story is. right? It's just someone's personal, their like there's been one motherfucker that's ever walked the face of the earth who's had a story interesting enough that it ended up in a book that people, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like this is fucking absurd, right? There's one person whose life was this interesting, and I'm not even trying to put myself on that level, right? It's fucking retarded to do so. The more often you don't share their preferences, the more often they feel as though they are wrong about something that is normatively understood to lack wrongness in the first place. Your preference for marinara over Alfredo cannot be wrong, but a narcissist senses autonomically that it can be, or vice versa. Which one is correct will depend on the narcissist's preference. Narcissists don't think that they are better than you in the relevant sense. Many will admit to feeling this way, though I argue that their understanding is skewed from the normative sense in which the question is asked. When someone, right, because they have malformed concepts, right? So they may agree, well, yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like I'm better than you know, but they also don't really understand what you mean when you say better than when someone doesn't like all of the same things as them, their self-esteem, right? So when someone else doesn't like all of the same things as the narcissist, their self-esteem takes a hit as a result of their self-esteem being built on the foundation that their subjective determinations are indicative of some sort of correct experience with the external world. So this is, speaking of the Twilight Zone Casino Fight Club, is the belief that I know what's going on. That's a core belief, especially to the asshole idiots who fucking agreed to participate. It is imperative that I am actually a member of the group because if I'm not, I'm a person that they're helping to victimize. I know I don't know. I suspect that whoever came up with this, realized no one would ever have any reason to believe her when she self-reports that she doesn't know what's going on. I can't prove I don't know. And that's the problem, right? Like I said, that I can't vindicate myself, right? I can't prove that I don't know what's going on. It would have to be demonstrate it would have to be evidenced as an essential element of this, which I believe it is, right? But it would have to be evidenced as being an essential part to this happening. And I don't think the people who did this would want that sort of information to get out for obvious reasons. So, yeah. When someone doesn't like all the same things as them, their self-esteem takes a hit as a result of their self-esteem being built on the foundation that their subjective determinations are indicative of some sort of correct experience with the external world. The narcissist goes wrong as soon as their brain interprets their reactions to stimuli as though it came from the stimuli itself. Your favorite food is Chinese? Have you had pizza? It's curry. You're making jewelry? You know what would be cute? Make hair accessories. You're still making jewelry? Why don't you make hair accessories? Days go by. You still aren't making hair accessories? No, I'm not. I don't have any fixtures for hair accessories because I don't want to make hair accessories. If I wanted to make hair accessories, I would have bought the materials to make hair accessories. Cue narcissistic glitch. Which I feel like that story is almost very similar to the story of her and Sean and her continually insisting that she could get him a glass of water, right? And that it's like, if I wanted a glass of water, I'd just go get one, right? If I wanted to make hair accessories, I would just be making them. And I feel like it's kind of like if I knew what was going on, you wouldn't be necessary, right? Why do you think it's kind of like why would someone who's not a spy need a handler? Or like, okay, here's a better example. You know, like at like when I was working at Disney World, or like at Disney World, the characters have escorts because the characters are super famous and people like to like rush them and they want to just like run up and hug Mickey and Mickey might get startled and trip and fall and get hurt. And so the characters have escorts to help with the crowd mitigation, right? Where that it's like if I could see where I was going, why would I need a seeing eye dog? Dipshit. Right? So it's like there are ways in which I can sort of evidence that I don't know what's going on. But for some reason, the people in those roles don't understand that they would be unnecessary if the belief like if I knew what was going on. So there was an element where I feel like they got the job because they were willing to attempt to quote unquote smoke me out. So like the reason that they're doing all of this stuff is because they're trying to trip me up and get me to admit that I knew what was going on by answering them or picking up on what they were saying. And that's just a really annoying way to live. And I think that's one of the things about this that it's like, hey, powers that be, do you not realize that that's extremely emotionally and socially abusive? To be surrounded or be living with somebody who half the time, like, they're speaking to you way too much, and most of the time when they're speaking to you, it's in an attempt to use coded language to trip you up and trick you into admitting that you know about something you've never heard of. That's fucking torture, dipshits. The fuck you think being interrogated for 10 hours in a torture cell is? Right? It's like they came up with this game and then also added an element to it to torture me about my knowledge of the game in order to ensure that I'm still in the dark. That's cruel. Like, it'd be like if you cut somebody open and then they're bleeding, and you're like, oh no, you're bleeding, so you stitch it shut, but then the next day you're like, I'm going to cut off your stitches to see if you're still bleeding. When you can see that the wound isn't healed, right? So it's like, so every day they just keep ripping the wound open. Right? It's like every time somebody says or does some dumb shit, it's very triggering. Right? And it gets to a point where the triggering element of it is so elevated that people are actually in danger. So this whole idea of like, are you a danger to yourself or other people? Right now, in this moment, the answer to that question is, well, duh, of course I am. You stupid jackass dipshit. You want to fucking find out? Huh? Is today the day? Make my day? You want to fuck around and find out? You sure about that? Obviously, the answer is yes. Right? Cue narcissistic glitch. True story. About who? Him, of course. These sorts of interactions will lead the narcissist to feel like something is wrong with you because they can't understand why you've gotten so upset when they're just trying to help. Remember, you're an extension of them, not your own person, right? So, like, I'm not my own person. I'm just the person being manipulated by the people they work for. I'm not even being treated like a person. I'm being treated like an element of a game board, right? It's kind of like the way like coaches see the players on the field, right? Like you may have a wife and kids at home, but right now you're my first baseman and up to bat, and we really need to score a run. You better put the bat on the ball, right? I'm thinking like these people are so fucking weird. Like, did that guy really just look me in the eye and say, "You better put the bat on the ball"? And expect me to be like, thank you, sir. Like, what the fuck? Okay? You're the grumpy bitch personality, not another person giving them evidence that they are insufferable. Right? It's like the only thing that I know how to say or do in game language is I don't know what the fuck you're talking about because I don't, right? And but every time I give them information of like I don't know what you're talking about, they get upset. This is like I said, it's like being in a torture chamber interrogation. I've never even heard of the person you're looking for. I've never even heard the name before today. I do not have any information for you. Quit lying to me, bitch. Like, I don't fucking know. Right? At some point, them telling me, that so, like him screaming at me, like, that's the problem. You don't understand. I'm going to cut off your fingers, fry them up, and feed them to you in hot dog buns. Like, I'm fucking angry, right? I'm fucking done with this shit. The narcissist sees themselves, even if subconsciously, as the epitome of selflessness. They feel like they're taking the risk to stick their neck out for people, but keep getting their head chopped off. This is why their sense of self is so fragile. As they are ascribing the existence of their own thoughts, feelings, emotions, and reactions to those external objects as ontological features of those objects, there is nothing left for them to build a solid self with. So remember my cookbook example. They've distributed the pages throughout the groceries in the kitchen. They don't have a cookbook anymore. They just have, a bunch of food ingredients with recipes stapled to them. A narcissist giving to others what those others experience as unwanted advice or unnecessary suggestions that seem to indicate that the narcissist believes they are better than other people. It's just the narcissist actually vocalizing the neurological problem that is my thesis. The narcissist acts like they're the queen of the hive, and other people are their drones. The narcissist genuinely believes that they are being helpful by telling you what they sense about you is what you are or should be striving toward. They think they've noticed an attribute about you that you need to know about. It's not their opinion. Silly goose. Right, so remember how I was saying too, like living in two alternate realities, and how, like I said, like that I feel like their reality seems to revolve around me. They don't get to tell me that they know about reality. My reality is the one that's actually real, right? So, like I said, it's like you are not facilitating me running a race. You are chasing me and causing me to run until I have a heart attack. Those are two completely different scenarios. One of them is reality, and one of them is whatever the fuck they think is really going on here. The narcissist has no use for what others call empathy and intimacy because in their mind, that's what they are doing by ascribing their judgments, opinions, thoughts, feelings, observations, and the like to you as a person, and then telling you how to change what they perceive as negatives into what they perceive as positives. They feel like they are constantly being empathetic and intimate with you. What the narcissist ends up missing is how many of their suggestions are obvious next steps, or how much of that advice doesn't accurately depict your internal state or reflect who you are. They are essentially constantly doing to other people what they are terrified of other people doing to themselves. But they don't realize it, right? So that it's like, I'm the one who's in the dark. I'm not one of the people who's keeping you in the dark, right? So it's like as they're trying to prod me for information, right? Just tell me, just tell me, just tell me. I don't even know what they're talking about. They're begging me for answers and I've never even heard the question, but they honestly think that I'm the one who's torturing them by withholding the next piece of the puzzle. And it's just like completely and patently false. They sound completely nuts, and I'm just trying to live in reality and do my thing. I'm like, the song "Get Up 10" by Cardi B. I was listening to it again last night because I love it and whatnot. It's a great song, but it's like there's a point in the middle where like the mood kind of changes, and she says like, "I was just trying to chill and make things." Sorry, my hair just blew in my mouth. I was just trying to chill and make bangers. Tell all these old bitches they in danger. Like I'm like, girl, like, are you in my head? Like that's exactly how I feel. Right? Like I was just trying to mind my own business and live my life and do me and do what I was trying to do. And then these assholes came along, blindfolded me, shoved me to the ground, and now everybody's pointing and laughing, and I don't know what to do about it. But I'll tell you what. If someone finally helps me up off the fucking ground, I'm gonna shove this stick in your ass. That's what the fuck I'm finna do. What the narcissist ends up missing is how many of their suggestions are obvious next steps, or how much of that advice doesn't accurately depict your internal state or reflect who you are. They are essentially constantly doing to other people what they are terrified of other people doing to themselves. This likely leads to feelings of frustration as they, the saint who only wants to help everyone be better, is told to butt the fuck out by those they're trying to help. You think you're setting reasonable boundaries or performing an intervention. The narcissist reacts like a driver who is surprised by you honking and furiously flipping them off as you fly past them after swerving dangerously into the lane they just came from because they didn't check their blind spot before cutting you off during rush hour. Oh my, I didn't even see them there. Exactly, because they can't see past themselves, right? Oh my God, I didn't know you had your own dreams. Oh my God, I didn't know you had your own preferences. I didn't know you were allergic to that food I just fed you, right? I didn't know you were allergic to bullshit and it's nothing but a manure farm around here. Imagine there's them and there's you standing face to face. Between you, there's a hazy figure of them staring back at them. That's their sense of self. It comes from you, right? It seems to come from you as you interact with them, as if you're projecting a holographic avatar of them. They literally can't see past themselves to see there's another real person there who has their own lane of thoughts, desires, and concerns. If you don't match what they expect, it distorts their image of themselves. Over time, these interactions contribute to the callous roughness of the narcissist as their feathers are ruffled time and time again. When you give them negative feedback, their avatar distorts into an ugly figure they don't recognize. Imagine if you were looking at yourself in the mirror and your face just started to melt off. You'd be horrified, wouldn't you? So when the narcissist's reflection doesn't match their ideal sense of self, they are horrified, but take it out on you as if you're the monster because they think you're the one who's telling them that's what to look like. You don't need nor deserve that energy in your life, right? Because I was forced to live with these people. 5 years with him. 5 fucking years of somebody trying to smoke me out and me constantly telling them they're a stupid asshole, effectively, right? Essentially. Dude, you're dumb to believe what you believe. Right? It's dumb for you to believe that I've heard of this before. But it is, because if I'd heard of this or knew what was going on, I wouldn't be blind and I wouldn't need you, my seeing eye dog. Right? And so remember I mentioned before, I was like, there's got to be some element of this that they should be able to recognize indicates that I don't know what's going on in the first place, and that's because if I did, I wouldn't need their help. See how it comes together though? Like that's the thing that's weird to me is like the pieces kind of start to fall into place. I mean, it's like I can feel knots loosening in my shoulder blades just thinking through this stuff, right? It's also that I've got Planet Fitness back and I've been abusing the massage chairs. But but it is what it is. I gotta stop this video soon because it's been like what, an hour or something. But I am gonna just move on to the next because I want to finish this today. But like I said, I feel like it's coming together and I'm getting a lot of this off my chest. So I will see you in the next one. Bye.